Hi, everyone. Welcome back to AHRK Encounter. I'm your host, Maha, and I'm so excited to walk on this AHRK path with you. Today, we have a very special VIP, and together we will encounter overcoming obstacles through the lens of community. And of course, not without our wonderful guide, Bernard Bashura. So let's get our AHRK Encounter journey started with this video.
Lifestyle path to better choices. It empowers us to live life to the fullest and paves the way for people like you and me to discover our unique purpose and passion. Choosing to walk the AHRK path invites transformation and growth in 5 key areas of life: leadership, communication, mindset, community, and lifestyle. As we dive into these lenses, they redirect our focus and guide us into a deeper understanding of where we're at today and where we're going tomorrow. This is AHRK Encounter. Welcome to the AHRK Path.
And welcome back to the AHRK Encounter. This week we have an amazing topic, and it's something that touches all of our lives. It's something that we look at and we struggle with every day, and it's how do we manage obstacles? And today we're going to talk about overcoming obstacles. And it's just, what are obstacles? And we're going to hear from an amazing group of guests this coming week. But today we have a very special friend, somebody that's lived a lifetime of overcoming obstacles. And it's somebody that you can relate to because it's somebody you encounter almost every day of your life. So here we have Matt Rodriguez. So welcome, Matt.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you for having me, Bernard. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And Matt, I introduced you that way is because you worked in law enforcement.
Yes.
And it's something that we encounter every day of our lives. But there's a story behind the man and the position and the job. And we celebrate that because we celebrate the life that you've lived, but we want to know your story. And so tell us a little bit about some of your background.
Well, first of all, I appreciate you taking the time to acknowledge that. You know, oftentimes people get confused. They see us in uniform and they think that we're invincible or, Supermen, but we're not. We're just like everybody else, and we go home with our struggles and our insecurities, and we have to deal with that on top of seeing a lot of things. So, my life is no different than any other man. I grew up here in the San Gabriel Valley and was the son of a police officer, and my brother was also a police officer. So I grew up as that young man who was supposed to be something more, as maybe a lawyer or something like that. They always groomed me to do that, but it was just in the blood. And at some point, it came to my attention that law enforcement is my passion. So I went in that direction. But it was not simple getting there. It started at a very young age. When I realized that, I was painfully shy and that I was taken to schools that I was not actually slated to go to because they were for people of, gifted, mindsets. And so I found myself from a very young age struggling with, insecurities and anxieties that I wasn't even aware of until I was much older.
Yeah, and that's our journey of overcoming obstacles. I mean, that's kind of one of the things that we really want to get our guests to connect with is we all have obstacles. We all have barriers in our lives that we look at, go, what is this? What is this time in my life? What is this struggle that I'm going through? And you're sharing that it began early on in your life, that you recognize that there was this obstacle, your shyness, as you kind of said it. It's something that was that first barrier you had to overcome.
Yes, I was in elementary school, and I got tapped on the shoulder by the teacher. They said, "Hey, well, you need to go to the office because we need to get your parents involved in this situation. You're going to another school." Because I had tested, I guess, above average, and I ended up in a gift for mentally gifted minors. So I show up at a school with I didn't know anybody, and I'd grown up on a block with 40 kids where we were all just brothers and sisters, and now I find myself in this school with strangers, and I was just painfully shy. And I remember, the whole time, my entire educational life, just staring at the clock and wanting to get out of there as quickly as possible. And I think later, when you get a chance to reflect and learn a little bit about psychology, you probably realize, okay, this guy had some ADHD, and I was tailor-made for high school because the classes were 50 minutes long, but anything longer than that, I had to get out.
Yes.
And that went all the way through college, and I've been in college my entire life, but I couldn't sit still. I could sit still, but I had to escape. and occupy myself by either taking copious notes or something. So there was something going on there,
Yes.
and then it turns out that there were a lot of anxieties running in my family heritage or lineage, and I didn't escape that gene, so I had to learn how to deal with that.
I love that. And again, it's on the AHRKpath when we commit to talking to someone, we recognize that they're a VIP. And for us, what a VIP is someone that understands their values, knows their identity, and really lives into their purpose. And you've been able to overcome so many obstacles in your life and to live into your purpose. But for us, we look at it as something that's anchored in your values and identity. So share with us a little bit about how did your overcoming these challenges that you're talking about anchor your values? What were your values during these times, and where is that at today?
Well, I think the three pillars of my life are real simple. It's faith, family, and friendship. And we talked a little bit off camera, but oftentimes I find myself only turning to faith when I'm in trouble or in times of need. And as I've gotten older, I learned to acknowledge that, hey, there's faith is around me constantly, good and bad. So when I was at my lowest moments and, I recognized that I couldn't do this alone, I turned to faith and the faith in God and praying and asking for his help to help me survive my darkest times. And then naturally you turn to your family as well. And it's hard on them to see somebody struggling. Yes. But when you have loved ones around you who care about you, then you can lean on them, and friends as well. So for me, those pillars that you just talked about are really about faith, family, and friendship.
Yes, and then that helped you. That really brought you into your profession as you went into law enforcement. Those values had to carry you. I mean, the stress, the challenges of learning, understanding what it is, how do you cope with the day-to-day of being in law enforcement? And that's kind of where we pull that your VIP in a sense, so that you can overcome, because there's how many obstacles. I mean, if we had to make a list, it would be pretty long. But you learned the pattern, and I'd love for us to kind of show that. That's kind of that acknowledgement, is that you learned that there's a pattern that you had to overcome in life. So can we share a little bit with our audience?
Well, yeah, unfortunately, in our field, we suffer a lot from stress that we don't even acknowledge. They didn't teach us in the Sheriff's Academy that you'd be stressed out and that you'd be seeing the worst of humanity, and then you'd have to go home and be a different person. Mm-hmm. They didn't really give us those tools. So for me personally, it wasn't until I was in my 40s and had been involved in probably 7 or 8 really life or death situations, either using deadly force or having deadly force used upon me, that it wasn't that I finally just broke down. I was in my 40s and started to acknowledge some changes in me, physically and emotionally, and it was a very difficult time, because prior to that, I was just leading a life of laughter and love and happiness, and we didn't grow up with a lot of values or as far as these tools. Yes. We grew up on a block of people who we just went with the seasons. We played football, we played basketball and baseball, and nobody talked about education, nobody talked about future. It was just, hey, we're live for the moment. Yes. And then all of a sudden I find myself in this really heavy career dealing with heavy issues, and coming home to a family of children and a wife and a home, and how do you cope? Yes. And then suddenly, you're in pain. Yes. And I had to deal with that, and I had to overcome that.
Yes, and you did, and kind of as we were talking about, you've overcome it over and over. It's kind of this, we think of life going, I'm going to get through this one big hurdle, and then it's going to be like, I'm going to coast for the rest of life, and that's not really it. That's not the system.
No, there's so many crossroads. Those crossroads started when I, show up as a second grader in a new school and insecure, and having to make new friends. And then it goes into high school where you show up and, I was a 105-pound football player, and, they saw me and, laughed in my face, literally. But I take these challenges very personally. I love it when someone throws the gauntlet down. In high school, that happened to me. I showed up as a freshman football player, 105 pounds, got laughed at literally in my face. Fast forward, 4 years, and I was a first-team all-league wide receiver, and those guys that laughed at me were graduated standing on the fence watching me catch 14 passes in one game against our rival. So I always dug really deep to accomplish that. And I'll give you another story. I got in trouble in high school. A friend of mine, a group of us, about 8 of us or so, did a stupid practical joke, and we were dismissed from high school early. Fortunately, I had had enough credits to graduate, so I ended up midterm having at a crossroad. I can't be with my friends, girlfriends, or what have you. So I ended up going to college early. And why did I do that? Because the dean of the high school told me, you're going to go to prison. You're going to amount to a nobody. Wow. So there's the gauntlet again. I said, okay, well, you know, it was a great scenario, because 4 years later I went back to him, and I was now a senior at UCLA. Wow. And applying to go to the sheriff's department. And his jaw literally hit the desk, because I was the guy that he said, you're going to prison. Yeah. And, you know, here it is, I don't even know, 40 years later, and I have 2 master's degrees, a bachelor degree, and an associate of arts degree. And I credit him for that. And I credit the head professor at Cal State Long Beach, when I went to go get a master's degree, for telling me that my grades weren't good enough to get in. She would let me in provisionally. Wow. And there's the gauntlet. And they're throwing a challenge. I said, okay, well, that's fine. And 17 master's classes later, you know, 15 of them being A's and 2 B's. And so that's how I kind of do it, Bernard.
Overcoming.
You know, I love when people throw the challenge or basically tell me, you can't do it, Matt, which, you know, almost takes me to where we're at today.
Well, and you know, what a great story, well, all of them. I mean, the AHRKpath is about that, is that initial acknowledgement of what's going on here. Where am I at? And it's that awareness is so critical. And I think you've demonstrated early on in your life that I need to, there's something that's not right here. And when you acknowledge that, you needed some healing. When people tell you you can't do this, requires going, hey, wait a minute, who am I? What are my values? And required some healing. So let's talk a little bit about healing in your life. What did it look like? Because you had to acknowledge that there was some pain in your life, some hurt, and then there was some healing from that.
Oh, well, there was a lot of pain, and there was a lot of struggle. And when you look as the sole provider for a family who are relying on you, you have little children. I had a young son that was about 5 years old. You know, my daughters would have been 8 and maybe 12 or 11 or so. And they were really relying on me. Hey, Dad, you know, are you okay? You're going to be okay. And, you know, I'm dealing with post-traumatic stress, and I'm dealing with anxiety, which then, you know, the twisted sister of depression. And I'm looking at all that, and I had to go get educated on this, because this is not something that I was aware of. I had it, and it became very crystal clear to me later that I carried it my whole life. But until you have perspective, you don't know. So a lot of therapy, a lot of psychology, a lot of books, a lot of studies, and you find out, hey, you know what? And then you learn that it's in your lineage, that your mother suffers from this, and other family members as well. So the healing was tough. It was a lot of work, a lot of work. And I could see why people give up. And, you know, it's so much work, but a guy like me who's tenacious and takes these challenges personally, I'm gonna scratch and claw my way out of that hole any way I can. So the healing was beautiful in a sense, because I learned so much about myself. I learned so much about the people around me, and how to channel this energy into success and really compartmentalize what I need to do. And my sister tells me I've never met anybody who can compartmentalize like you. Doesn't matter if the world's on fire around you, you're going to stay focused, and you keep your eye on that.
And I love that, because I want to capture that for our viewer. Again, Matt's victory in overcoming and healing, it was a challenge. But again, the step forward is compartmentalize it. You know, take it one piece at a time, one step at a time. And I don't think he meant closing it off. It's just breaking it down to bite sizes to keep overcoming.
No, not closing it off by any means, but definitely what I mean by that is, if you're having a personal struggle that day, don't let it overcome your entire day. You have something else you have to focus on. You might have to go to a child's recital that day and put all your problems on at the door for about 2 hours, because we did a lot of that, and a lot of football, a lot of, you know, children's activities. And so, that's what I meant by compartmentalizing. Never shut it off. It's always there, and you got to acknowledge it, and you have to work on it.
You have to work on it, and you've done the work. And the victory is, as you've done the work, you found a way to restoration. You found out, you've acknowledged that there's an issue. You went through healing. You studied. You spent time. You did the work, and then the outcome is you restored it to what it was supposed to look like. And what I like, for me, there's a normalization of what life is supposed to be. It's that healthy mindset in overcoming these obstacles that we're talking about. How did restoration play out after you've acknowledged and you healed a pain in your life?
Well, I mentioned something earlier about just watching the clock. Okay, I was never living in the moment. Never, never. I was always focused on what's tomorrow, what's the next degree, what's the next promotion, what's the next house we're going to buy, what's the next nice car we're going to get, whatever it is. I never lived in the moment. So the ability to live in the moment now and take in a sunset. If you're dealing with ADHD or whatever I was dealing with, you don't take in sunsets. You can't wait for the next day.
No.
And so now, just last week, I was driving down Pacific Coast Highway from Laguna Beach all the way to Long Beach and spent 30 minutes enjoying a really magnificent view of the sunset and thanking God for that moment. So I really, what it looked like to me was being able to slow things down, live in the moment, be appreciative for everything. Even this moment here with you is I'm incredibly humbled and grateful just to spend this time being able to talk about this.
Thank you. Yeah, what a great story of restoration, because that's, people think that, I'm going to overcome this big obstacle and there's this big trophy and at the end of that rainbow, but really overcoming these obstacles, there's peace. Which is so priceless, that place where you get to, where you can celebrate a sunset, where you can celebrate time with your family. And that's the journey. That's kind of, for me, the motivation to overcome my obstacles. And I just love how you shared that.
Well, and then the other one is, I think as we're young men and women who are ambitious, type A personalities and striving for the top, you start to lose focus on what's important. The nice house on the hill, the nice cars, the nice clothes, the nice watch. None of that means anything to me anymore. I mean, I've had it. I've had money. I've lived at the top of the hill. I've been broke.
Yeah.
And now I live a pretty humble life. I look after my 95-year-old mother, and with much less around me than I had historically. And I did that by design, because with that comes a lot less stress and also just a more appreciation for what's important. And my entire life has just been a study of how to be a better person. And that's ultimately what has come of it. Not that I was a bad guy, but I didn't take the time to acknowledge what I should have been acknowledging, because I was too busy chasing the rainbow or whatever you want to call it. But that's not what motivates me anymore. I'm not motivated by power. I'm not motivated by money, by notoriety. Nothing. I'm motivated by faith, friendship, family, and service to the community.
Love that. And really, that you led us right into the kingdom. And when we talk about kingdom, is that place where you've felt restoration. You've acknowledged I've received restoration in my life. And kingdom is, how do I give it away? And that's a place to live, because a lot of people, again, when you were younger, pain was a normality. It was just there. It was supposed to be there. It's been there. But when we get into this kingdom reality, where you go, the pain is not supposed to be there. There is a way to overcome the pain and to live a life without it. And that's the kingdom, is not just to acknowledge that, but to be able to give it away. And that's kind of what you're in this phase of your life right now, is you're still overcoming obstacles, but you're living a kingdom reality of giving that hope that you've received in different parts of your life. I'd love for you to share about that.
Well, I don't think you're ever going to be, arrive at the kingdom and say, oh, it's all good now.
There's work in the kingdom. Right? There's work in the kingdom.
I don't see that as the case. But what I remember a doctor told me one time, he says, Matt, now that you've acknowledged and you've recognized these struggles that you've had to go through, your job now is to help others.
Amen.
And I can spot somebody from a mile away, first of all, just by the nature of the work I do, but somebody who's struggling, emotionally or physically or mentally, I could spot them a mile away. Yeah. And I've provided so much fellowship and so much guidance and walked people to therapists, and said, hey, look, just get yourself the help. Don't worry about it. There's nothing to be ashamed of. Don't hide from it, acknowledge it, and work on it. Yeah. So it's a constant work in progress, but recognizing it in other people and helping other people is really my passion at this point.
I love it, and you're bringing that to life. And if you don't mind me sharing, I know to our audience, you're running for sheriff and for LA County, and that's it. You're taking on this monumental task, not just to go through the process, but it's to serve the community at a new level, and for me that's. I honor that so much, because it's, I love serving my family and my community, but for me to serve such a bigger audience requires that much hope, to give that much hope away. And I've seen that as we've talked. I love the hope that's inside of you, and I know that's what motivates you to give it away. What is your thoughts on that hope that you want to give away?
I'm at the point now of my life where I actually could retire. I could go out to Palm Desert and watch the grass grow on a golf course, but I just don't have that inside of me. Yeah. There's never going to be that level of just satisfaction where I say, okay, now I'm going to sit on the lazy boy and just, watch Netflix till the end of time. That'll never happen. I feel I feel a moral obligation to give back to the community that gave so much to me. And, law enforcement was my passion, is my passion, and always will be. But let's face it, we have some issues in law enforcement. I mean, just last year during the pandemic, we watched the tragedy of the George Floyd situation. A man who did not deserve to die, should have never died in that fashion. And then the social unrest that came from that. And so I looked back at that and really reflected and said, well, what's the issue here? What's missing? And it was really just a matter of respect. Respect from the law enforcement officers towards the community, and respect for the community back to law enforcement. We just lost that. So as a profession, in my career, we've gone backwards, and that's really unfortunate. So for me to just sail off into the sunset knowing I left law enforcement in worse condition than when I arrived, that doesn't sit well with a guy like me. Yes. So I have a moral obligation to give back, to try to create a new law enforcement that fits into today's modern society, that serves the people better, serves people of all color equally. And, the term respect, I learned that as a very young deputy sheriff working in the county jail, off to the streets. And I'll just say this, I had a dream. And I'm a lyricist and a songwriter and a guitar player. And I had a dream one night. I woke up at like 2 or 3 in the morning with the concept of respect in my head. Yes. And it was real simple. I got up, on my iPhone notes, I wrote down respect. It means we will serve people responsibly, ethically, sensibly, professionally, empathetically, civilly, and transparently. I wrote that on my iPhone notes at about 3 or 4 in the morning, shut the phone down, went back to sleep. Woke up the next morning, checked the notes, and said, wow, that was amazing. Now that was a gift from God.
That's a good dream.
And that was a gift from God. And, people who question that say, oh, well, I don't know. But, Paul McCartney wrote Yesterday in his sleep. So it happens. Yeah. So right when that happened, the next day, I knew that was the cornerstone to my campaign. And everything I do is centered around the principles of God and the concept of respect.
Love that. Thank you so much. That was what a rich time. And really, I just want to tell the audience, there is hope in overcoming distractions. There's hope in overcoming every obstacle that's in your life. As Matt has demonstrated, it's something that is marked his career, his life, his family, and his goal is to give it away. And so we want to thank you for joining us on the AHRKpath. We want to thank you for being with us today. I appreciate that so much. I love listening to your heart, and I can't wait to have a drink with you about that some more. I want to learn more about that. But find out more about our community. Find out more about what the work that we're doing is, because it is to bring more hope into our communities, our families, and our careers, what we're supposed to be doing. And here is Maha to show you and tell you more about more information on the AHRKpath.
Wow, I love Matt's story. I think more and more we're realizing that no one is excluded from anxiety and insecurities. So Matt chose to work and to fight to overcome these obstacles. Despite what he's gone through, what he's seen, the negativity that was spoken over his life. And I think that type of tenacity and that faith allowed transformation in his life. So I speak that over you. I speak that over me today. If you enjoyed what you heard and you want to check out more videos, come visit our website at AHRKpath.com, our social media at AHRKpath. We also have an app called Circles Now. We have courses and amazing podcast sessions created by our very own Bernard Bashura and Casey Cox. So I'm your host, Maha. I hope you enjoyed this time with us. Thank you for tuning in to AHRK Encounter. We'll see you next time.